I think the main factor is, if you think of the marginal investor in Bitcoin, the average person, the adoption, right? Those people have seen prices rise 10% in terms of their everyday cost of living, but the wages haven't gone up that much. So what you've taken is marginal consumption away, or their ability to invest, stick a few more dollars into Bitcoin. That has left the market. We've seen network growth slow down. The other thing that happened was obviously the Chinese left the market. And so that's left the market in a slightly less stable way, because you've taken out a whole bunch of demand. Now, there are plenty of Chinese still in the market, but you took out a lot of that. So with those two factors, and then kind of the overall sort of fear of the tightening of monetary policy and what that could do to other financial markets, you know, if you think there's new participants in this now, there's people like hedge funds. And if they're, you know, one portfolio is blowing up, they end up having to reduce risk elsewhere. So everything starts becoming a bit correlated. So I think those were the primary drivers behind what's been going on. So a long time ago, about a year and a half ago, I switched most of my Bitcoin holdings into ETH, and then I bought a basket of alts of different, to get different exposure to different parts of the market, because you don't really know what's going to get traction and what's not. So over time, I continued to reallocate my Bitcoin into ETH. I always wanted to keep a bit of Bitcoin, because you want to, you know, cheer for the team as well. But also, you know, the thing that I get people, Bitcoin maxes hate me for, is like, this is a network and a community. If you are fundamentally awful to people joining your community, people want to leave. And that's just a matter of fact. And if you get picked on every time you say anything that could possibly be perceived as anything negative on Bitcoin, then you, after a while, you think, why even bother? Now, you'd bother if it was outperforming, but it's not. And I think the network growth in Bitcoin has been slower than people have expected, and this is one of the reasons. I mean, institutions just don't like this kind of stuff, the toxicity that can exist. I mean, there's tons of good people in Bitcoin, and, you know, I understand the philosophy, and if that's your point of view on the philosophy, great. Don't attack other people, because then it becomes like a religion, and they become exclusive and not inclusive if you're not careful. And that's the issue I had. So I always want to retain some Bitcoin, but it's not going to be my core holding unless I think it's going to outperform, which I don't think it will. The metaverse. It's not a single place, it's a state of being. And it's a never-ending pathway there. So as we build out games, VR on phones, as Apple start launching their VR push, Facebook and whatever they're trying to do with, Apple and AR, Facebook and VR, all of the other permutations and combinations, just different kind of web experiences that are more 3D and personalized, that don't look like the 2D of Web 1 and Web 2. I think all of this is the metaverse. I think the metaverse is a place where you can live and work and socialize in a digital environment. And that's becoming, it's accelerating towards us. But as with all exponential curves, you never really see it until it happens. And then you're like, holy shit, did this all just happen? And that's, you know, that's what's happening. If you look back over the last 10 years, oh my God, the change is dramatic, dramatic. Just think of the iPhone alone. You know, so, you know, even if you think about Teslas and self-driving cars and all of that, that's all kind of part of the whole metaverse concept, where your digital life is everything. It's much bigger than people realize. People try and focus on Ready Player One and think of it as that, but it's not. It's everything is being digitized, and it's happening in an accelerating pace. And that is the metaverse.
Do you think a public open metaverse, like what many people think of like the Ethereum type metaverse, could win over a private centralized metaverse, which we assume Facebook's meta will be?
So are there public and decentralized ledgers? Yes. Are there public and decentralized organizations? Yes. So they're just all part of the same thing. You just get to, you're free to choose where you want to go. In the digital world, as long as we've got interoperability, we can just pick up our shit and move elsewhere. So again, it's like we talked about with Bitcoin, you go to the communities that you feel more comfortable in, and that's okay. And you're not forced in it. Right now, we're forced into communities within Facebook and Google and these kind of platforms. But the new world allows us the freedom of movement. It's the same happening with money. We've basically now got the freedom of opting out of the US dollar and using Bitcoin, or opting out of US treasuries. So it's the opting out ability that I think is really powerful. It also helps police the private sector entities, because if you've got freedom of movement, then they're more incentivized to not be monopolistic, or at least evil in their intention of their monopoly. They may end up as a monopoly, and that's fine, but at least they need to treat people better, because people can leave, particularly when you own your own digital identity. Right now, Google basically owns your identity and uses it how they see fit.